Alright everyone, welcome back again to more Misericorde Volume 2, White Wool and Snow. I believe we made it through already 21 chapters worth of this game so far, and I'm excited to see what happens next in the upcoming ones, seeing as how we're nearing the end, I believe. So if anything else guys, hope you all continue to enjoy. Thank you again for your love and support. And let's continue on. I still have those dreams. Have I ever shared the details? They're rather unsavory. It always begins in a tent. Sometimes I'm nude. Sometimes I'm dressed. And if I begin the dream in one state, I typically end up in the other before the end. I leave my tent because I hear a commotion outside. When I step outside, I see that where I have made camp is in the middle of a siege. There are men chasing other men with spears and swords, but they never seem to touch. They just rotate. They form a great big circle around my tent. Two armies spinning around me, unable to land true against their foes. And then, invariably, one of them sees me, and they begin to chase after me. One by one, the soldiers peel off away from the circle and charge toward me. Then I run as far and as fast as I can through the desert. Sometimes I keep running and running and running, unceasing until I wake up. Sometimes I trip on a rock and fall head over heels. And sometimes I turn to face my pursuers, accepting whatever end might come my way. Comfortable that I am righteous and that I will die knowing that heaven awaits me. This is not the only dream, of course. Most of the others are simple Bible stories. This recurring one is not my favorite, nor is it the most salacious, but it is the one that makes me feel the most at peace. Whether I escape or die in the dream, I know that I am free from blame. Chased in my dreams, I feel righteous. That is a sensation that is hard for me to come by otherwise these days. On the night I am recounting, one of the pikemen caught up to me after I fell to the ground. I felt his spear run through me, and I awoke with a gasp. I struggled for air for a moment. When I calmed down, I sat up in bed. It was still dark out. All fires in the builder's camp had been snuffed out. The wee hours then. I must have only been asleep for an hour or two. I stepped out of bed and began to pace around the room. Panic rose in my chest. The day had been so overwhelming that I had forgotten my duties. Unpleasant memories flooded my mind. I had urgent things to investigate. The sacristy and all of Eustace's books had been burnt to a crisp. I retrieved the superior's cloak from the hook on my wall and fastened it around my shoulders. Sleeping any longer would be a dire waste of time. I opened my door and made haste to retrieve a candle from the mantel. I nearly slipped and fell, however, almost immediately. After righting myself, I looked down to see what I had trodden on. It was a pile of fresh clothes. No doubt Moira or whoever had been assigned laundry had left it here for me while I slept. Good. I could leave these here in case someone woke up and left their room. No one would be any the wiser. I carefully lit a candle and departed for the library. It was very cold outside. Even the thick traveling cloak couldn't keep me from shivering as I approached the door. It was still ajar. This was almost too shocking a stroke of luck at first. However, when I pushed the door open and entered, I realized why it had not been locked. No one in their right mind would want to visit the library in this state. Wisps of smoke still curled around the room. The air was heavy and unpleasant. It was not as thick and toxic as it had been when I burst in during the blaze, but it still made my eyes water. I crept toward the shelves first, still maddened by their strange disappearance before. There they were, however, empty shelves as far as the eye could see. A glint of metal in the distance confirmed that the suit of armor was there too. I turned around. The sacristy was a far more pressing matter. That door was closed, but it swung open with ease. It was plain to see why. The interior side of the door had been hollowed out by the fire. The exposed locking mechanism was broken. I thanked God for another helpful coincidence. Ash was piled up around the room. A few pieces of gnarled furniture remained and only barely suggested their original shapes. I sifted through the debris, hoping to find a clue on a scrap of paper. Alas, any bit of page big enough to examine contained barely more than a single letter. The rest was dust. I searched for what felt like an hour, but I could not find anything notable. I swiped at a pile of ash in frustration and caused myself to cough. Curse Eustace. The library being accessible hadn't been good fortune in the slightest. It was the opposite. She must have had unfettered access to the room already. She must have taken any evidence already. She must have... My foot suddenly gave way and I slipped face first into the debris. A cloud of gray dust billowed up around me. In horror, I realized why I tripped over. There was something here after all. I can't really make out what it was she tripped over, though. Something flat, slightly elongated, about the size of a small plate. I did not recognize its shape, but the material was unmistakable. Many a time I had touched a substance like this or felt it between my teeth. Bone. I scrambled to my feet to get away from it. Oh, is it the goat? I felt ill, but my throat was too dry to heave anything out. Whispering a little prayer for forgiveness, I scooped the fragment out of the pile. I was close to fainting, but I kept myself steady by reminding myself what excellent proof I had just collected. Proof that Eustace was up to something sinister. Proof that the sacristy fire had been arson, no doubt to delete ghastly evidence of wrongdoing. I examined it closer and I realized just what an incredible piece of evidence this was. This oblong, flat shape. I had heard of a bone described this way before. The scapula. Flora had been eager to read about its associated magic in the library. No wonder Eustace had changed the subject quickly. I stopped dead. I recognized that awful sound. Not now. Not now! I scrambled to the darkest corner I could find and blew out my candle. The distant threshold blackened as the beast stepped into the threshold. As it stooped below to enter the sacristy, excuse me, I made myself as flat as I could and threw the cloak over myself, praying that I would blend in with the ash. The cold floor felt so strange against my skin. I shivered as the vibrations moved closer. If only I could sink into the stone. It stepped right in front of me. I could hear its labored breathing. I tried my best to match my breath to its own. It left the room. I let out a choking whimper and gingerly raised my head. I waited, giving the beast time to put distance between us. As soon as I was sure I could stand, I scrambled to my feet and crept toward freedom. Only to be narrowly missed by the beast's infernal blade. I fell backward with a yelp. My path to the landing was blocked. The creature readied another stab, striking downward, and narrowly missed me as I rolled to the side. With another violent thrust, it pinned me to the floor through the traveling cloak. I yanked it free with some effort, leaving a tear in the thick fabric. The shelves. Would I be safe between the shelves? I sprinted into the darkness. I could hear the monster's heavy footfalls behind me. Tears fell from my face as I ran. I was certain I made a fatal mistake. The shelves were devilish trickery. Surely this demon could traverse it as readily as I could. Perhaps we were of a kind. Was this hell? I turned around to face the beast ready for the sword, but it was well behind me. It stood at the edge of a dim light, the same place Angela had been befuddled. Are you kidding me? She's the only one that could enter that area? It wheezed angrily and paced back and forth. Was it confused? I tried to slow my breathing. My pursuer, too, seemed to be attempting to calm itself down. Against my better judgment, I slunk forward to get a better look at the monster. But as I approached the regular shelves, it gave up. Thwarted, the beast skulked away. It doesn't know! That's so weird. You would think it would know the special, I don't know, entrance way further into the shelves. It stooped lower to fit through the doorway and disappeared into the darkness. For a moment, I felt relief. It was only a moment, however. I realized that it might now be heading toward the dorm. As quietly as I could, I left the library. I whipped my head side to side and saw that it was departing down the hall. It morphed into the shadows, but I could see that it was moving, back toward that crossroad I had seen it for the first time. Back to the hallway that had chased Flora and I through. It turned to the right, toward my old cell. I stood on the landing, unsure of what to do. I could not face that creature alone again. Slowly, I backed away and returned to bed. I clenched my fingers around the scapula as I walked. When I arrived in the dorms, I hastily kicked the pile of clothes into my room and shut the door behind me. I scrambled to my knees to hide the bone and make sure that the sword I had confiscated was still under my bed. The lack of locks in the dormitory doors had never been a problem thus far, but I supposed that undead beings weren't bound to the same laws of decorum as nuns. However, the sword was still safely tucked in its hiding spot. So there's two swords, which meant... Yep, exactly. That certainly complicated things. The question was this better or worse from my hunch about Eustace? To distract myself, I looked around the room for a place to hide the bone until the time came to present it as evidence. Under the bed would have to do. I had half a mind to march into Eustace's room now and demand answers, but I was sensible enough to wait. I needed to plan what to say to the superior. I sat on my bed staring at the wall, regulating my breathing and trying to think of my next move. I don't know, a part of me would have just followed the quote-unquote creature. Obviously, it might be a disguise. I was too anxious to sleep. Every now and then, my thoughts would be interrupted by little spikes of panic as I remembered the beast. Had Eustace summoned it somehow to trap and kill me in the sacristy? So what if the beast... alright, all what you call hands are pointing towards the fact that it could be Eustace under that getup. Or, if we want to go really, really out there, it could be Catherine, the first? The one that died? Or we think she died? Or was it, excuse me, simply chance? Little noises here and there made me jump. I sat there stewing until morning. It was only when I heard the other sisters rousing and leaving their rooms to gather for service that I finally began to breathe normally again. I stood up as tired and clammy as I had been after my trip to the stream and got dressed. It felt so strange. Everything sat wrong in my body. I had worn the same clothes every day for 20 years and now they felt completely alien to me. I'm not sure what they ever felt quite right again. As I joined the throng of nuns heading to the chapel, I noticed that several of them looked quite groggy. Hedwig, I see you found your clothes. Yes, thank you. Did you wash them? No, not me. I was busy checking in with the superior after the fire. I handed them off to Charity, who was happy to oblige. Yes, indeed I was. How are you feeling, Hedwig? Charity had come up beside me when I wasn't looking. Oh, I'm well enough. Just rattled from yesterday. Ahead of me, Angela turned her head. I'm sure you are, poor thing. Caught in the rain, sopping wet. You fell into the stream, I heard you say. Yes, I was looking for Eustace. I had a question about my chronicles and I rather stupidly thought to check if she had gone fishing. Not so stupid an idea. Eustace spoke from behind me, then jogged around to my right. Fishing in the rain isn't so bad, I could have been. She was being oddly friendly. Or not friendly, but normal. This was the Eustace I knew and tolerated. The threatening tone of many of our recent conversations was missing. It made me furious. It took all of my strength to resist grabbing her head and slamming it into the nearest stone pillar. You should have done that. You should have done that. I was gonna call her Eustace. She should have done it. I wish Hedwig did it. Is that so? I wanted to ask her how she had managed to sleep at all, considering I had a piece of her victim hidden under my bed. Yes. Whilst the fish up, gets them moving. Easy to get a bite. I was busy elsewhere yesterday, though. The fire was my fault. So I heard. As we approached the chapel, I saw the superior shoot Eustace a meaningful look. I was suddenly curious. What was going on? We all filed into our seats silently. The bishop, who had been leaning against the pulpit looking rather grim, stood up and straightened his clothes as the superior stepped inside. I remembered that Mora had informed me of his wish to speak with me. I suppose I would have to talk with him after service, although I dreaded the thought. She took the podium and I braced myself. I remembered the drubbing we had received after Flora had gone missing. Well, here we all are. Before we get on with service, there is something that must be addressed. As I am sure you all are aware, a fire broke out in the library yesterday afternoon. Nobody was hurt, thank goodness, but our sacristy was irrevocably damaged, to say nothing of its contents. We are most fortunate that the fire did not occur in the cellars or the dorms, that this is a blow to our pride and not our finances. or our congregation is nothing short of a miracle. I believe Sister Eustace would like to... Ah, yes. Eustace had stood up and was slinking toward the pulpit. The superior stepped aside to allow Eustace to address her audience. Hello. I'm sorry. I did not mean to put everyone in danger. She spoke in her typical clipped, emotionally ambiguous manner. I was careless. I wish I could say it won't happen again, but, well, I suppose I can say that. I should say it. I promise I won't ever put you all in harm's way again. My fault. Really? That's it? She stood still for a moment, not speaking. Her eyes were cast down, staring at the podium in front of her. It would only be appropriate, I think, that I resign my position as a sacrist. And while my opinion may not count for much after such a grave error, I would like to put a suggestion forward for a replacement. Sister Flora. There was a murmur of surprise from all of the sisters, not least of all Flora. Me? Yes. I would consider it, I suppose. I think it would be a good fit for Flora, especially while she recovers from her injury. I don't like that she picked Flora. It makes me think that they're both in on it. Ideally, it is a quiet job and one that requires very little movement, especially when we have, shall we say, a dearth of artifacts to manage for the time being. Will you still work in the library at all? I wasn't planning on it. Why? Are you gonna miss me? All the other sisters tittered. Well, I mean, I would to a degree, yes. That's very sweet of you to say. But no, I am suggesting that Flora take over all of my duties. It would be an excellent learning experience for her. The more I think about it, the more I like it. Sister Flora, do you accept this new position? Well, go on. Why wouldn't you? Aye, we'd help. That sounds like a yes to me. Oh, why not? A smattering of applause broke out around the chapel. Eustace stepped down from the pulpit, but the superior stopped her from returning to the pews with a question. What will you do? Not sure yet. I'd like some time to think about my role here, if you wouldn't mind. Of course. Take all the time you need. Thank you. Will you at least be able to help Flora get acquainted with the library? I think Hedwig is more than capable of showing Flora her new responsibilities. Very well. I understand that the library might be difficult for you to visit. Like, how convenient of her, the moment she just shows all, like, a majority of the evidence in the library, does she decide, like, oh, it's okay now for Hedwig to just, like, help out Flora with understanding her role in the library, considering a majority of the area of said library is burnt. Yes, very. I really am quite sorry about the fire. You're forgiven. Don't forgive her so easily for that. Eustace bowed their head and there was another outburst of applause. Everybody loves you, Sister Eustace. Eustace pulled her lips into a rather unconvincing smile, then ducked back toward the pews to take a seat. The rest of the service continued as normal. I would also want Hedwig to go back to her original chambers, because I want to know what that thing did in her cell. When we emerged into the cold winter sun, voices were echoing all around the cloister. Next to the chapel, the men were hard at work erecting the clock tower. I watched as everyone scattered to go about their days. Everyone except Darcy, I remembered. I frowned, and Mara noticed my distress instantaneously. Are you well, Hedwig? Just worrying about Darcy. Oh, I wouldn't. She'll turn up later. I'd imagine she stayed in the village overnight before. So I've heard. I suppose I ought to not worry. Try to relax. You're not responsible for everyone. I nodded, unable to tell Mara just how wrong she was. All of a sudden, a familiar shrill whistle pierced the crisp morning air. The few sisters who had managed to step away from the throng turned around instantly. In the distance, I even saw the men working on the tower turn into confusion. The sound had come from Sister Charity, who continued to waddle happily toward the chairs on the edge of the cloister. I was utterly bewildered. The sisters continued about their mourning, and the men eventually shrugged and continued building. Charity and Marta took their usual seats. I followed them, too, curious not to ask directly. Oh, joined the fogies today, Hedwig. I was just wondering what the whistle was about, actually. Marta and Charity exchanged a glance. What whistle, dear? I didn't hear anything. But do sit down, Hedwig. It's been a while since we caught up. I accepted the invitation begrudgingly. I did not appreciate being treated like a fool. Yeah, that's a loud whistle. And then even the men turned around, so what the hell are you talking about? Nasty business in the library, eh? I never did trust you to spit an open flame. I hope it hasn't affected your work too greatly, Hedwig. I hadn't thought about that. It'd be far too smoky there to work, I think. What ended up burning? Are the books still there? That'd be a terrible thing to lose all that history. Luckily, I think it was just affected the relics. Oh, you popped your head in already? Yes. It was quite brave of you to run in there last night in your skivvies. The two of them chuckled. I panicked. I was already worried for Eustace. You have far more thought for her safety than she ever had for ours. Oh, don't be so nasty, Marta. We nearly woke up roasted to a crisp. Never mind all that now. All in the past, all in the past. Well, if you can't work today, Hedwig, what will you do? I'm not sure. I suppose I'll wander around and offer my help here and there. Or just sit and enjoy some good company. Charity smiled warmly. You are always welcome, dear. Isn't that right, Marta? Yes, provided she's dressed for the occasion. Charity snort laughed. I flushed the scarlet but tried to play along. I must have looked quite foolish. You look like a pervert. Hope none of that lot saw you. She jabbed her stick toward the builders. I don't think they did, Marta. I should know. I was with them. Charity burst out laughing at her own admission. Marta looked highly unamused, but Charity was beside herself laughing. She slapped her knee and wiped a tear from her eye. I think we would have all noticed if Hedwig had walked in with her muff out. Yes, well, I was off in the other direction. What did I miss last night before the fire interrupted everything? Beauty sleep. It wasn't all that bad, to be honest. A few of us went to welcome the lads and shared a drink or two around the fire. They're very gracious, very handsome, and above all else, too young to consider spending any serious time with. Nice to look at, but that's all at the end of the day. I'll never understand you. Oh, don't sulk. I'm not sulking, I just don't trust them. Yes, you've said more than enough on that subject. Marta appeared to swallow her pride. She opened her mouth to respond, then stopped and simply sighed. As abrasive as Marta could be, I wanted nothing more than to tell her how right she had been about at least one of the men. Flora in the library then, I'm happy for her. She's been down in the dumps for so long now, I have to imagine this brightened her day. Are you joking? This is probably her worst nightmare. A title that comes with duties? She'll hang herself before the month is up. Oh, don't be nasty. Goodness gracious, do we need to get you to bed? I worked with her, that's all. Getting Flora to follow instructions? Good God. It's like pulling teeth. I have half a mind to pull a few of yours if you don't cheer up, Missy. I smiled and stood up. I could see that I wasn't going to find anything out about the strange whistling here. Thank you for the chat. I think I'll wander around about and see if I'm needed elsewhere. Very good. Have a lovely day, Hedwig. Marta waved me off. I felt compelled to bother more people about the mysterious sound, but I was close to the superior's office. Now was as good a time as any to get my meeting with the bishop over with. I knocked on the door, half expecting the superior to open it. She would loom over whatever conversation the bishop and I were to have, no doubt. I was wrong, though. Ah, Sister Hedwig. Do come in. The bishop, it would seem, was in the office alone. He ushered me inside as polite as ever. Greetings, Your Grace. Now, none of that. I shan't have you kissing my ring. This would just be a friendly chat. Very well. Where's the superior? She's finding cleaning supplies for Eustace, I believe. How are you? You seem ill at ease. No, it's only... Both you and the superior insist on foregoing the protocols of your stations. The man chuckled ruefully. The ceremony grows a bit tiresome after so many years. I know when to use it and when to speak plainly. And now is certainly a time for plain speech. I am worried for you, Sister Hedwig. Are you well? Is this about my manner of dress last night? Your lack of it, dare I say? But no. Not exclusively, anyway. I don't need to know all the details, but it's one of my many clues that has me concerned. Well, I do appreciate your concern. Things have not been easy as of late. I can only imagine. Mabel has placed you in quite the predicament. I wouldn't have approved had she told me her little plan before executing it. But that's her for you. She disobeys orders often? I wouldn't say that, no. She has a habit of making choices I would order her not to make, however. She prefers to ask for forgiveness and permission. He chuckled again. Actually, I'm not sure she even asks for forgiveness. I find myself rather exhausted with it all, to tell you the truth. Although, I can report that I think I am making good headway. Are you? Never mind. Save it for later. I'm here to ask about you, not about your task. Very well. He began to walk around the room. I still find it hard to believe that it's really you, to tell you the truth. I remember sealing you in that cell as if it were yesterday. He leaned against the threshold to the superior's bedroom. Well, she didn't let me out. It was rather forceful. That's right. She told everyone else that you requested it, though, yes? Yes. He clucked his tongue and shook his head. I do not like all of the lying, even if it is for a noble cause. Imagine how I feel. You say you're confident that you're closing in on the answer. What will you do when this is all over? Stay here, I suppose? I shall have much to repent for. You mustn't curse yourself so. Worry about that when it's over. Would you like to come back to the diocese with me? I'm sure we could find you an upstanding position, perhaps somewhere a little more urban, more academic. I dare say you deserve a nice study. Somewhere to illuminate manuscripts, or write commentaries perhaps. Something overlooking a river, or... Thank you, but I don't think I'd like that. No? I appreciate the offer, but... Leaving my cell has already been enough of an adventure. Relocation to another abbey or a city? I think that might kill me. I understand. This is a rather ill-mannered abbey, however, and I imagine that things might end up a little strained between you and your sisters when they find out you've been spying on them. If you ever change your mind. I shan't. I am only a letter away. We stood in silence for a moment. May I ask you something, Your Grace? Of course. Where did I come from? Trier. Yes, of course, but I mean, what circumstances? You mentioned remembering sealing me in the cell so clearly. I'm afraid I don't. Your family thought the church could offer a better upbringing than they could. But why was I made an anchoress? You argued for it. Made quite a case for yourself, in fact. I was skeptical at first. Becoming an anchor writer and anchoress is a noble calling, but you were so young. But you refused to take no for an answer. Does that jog your memory at all? No. But it makes me feel proud. It also made me feel rather dizzy, but I kept that to myself. I felt invigorated. Perhaps Eustace knew nothing after all. Perhaps she had been bluffing when she threatened me in the cellar. You have always argued with passion. I may not approve of Mabel's choices in the matter, but I do have faith in your ability to solve this nasty business. Now then, you are sure you're quite well? Positive. Run along then. Do try and take care of yourself. I bowed my head and left the office. The door swung shut behind me, and I exhaled deeply. That had not been so bad, although it had left me a little shaky. The bishop was a kind man, but if you can forgive my past self-cynicism, I found them a bit empty. As I left, any lingering thoughts about our conversation were replaced with ones about that damn whistling. Soon, I was back to wondering who I could count on to tell me about Charity's odd behavior. I headed toward the garden where I had seen Margaret and Catherine depart. Perhaps they would trust me, intimate as we were. Unfortunately, after following the sound of their voices through the hedgerows, I found Margaret in distress. Oh, Sister Hedwig. Not a good time, I'm afraid. My apologies. I can go. No, it's no trouble. Hello, Hedwig. I apologize. I was just... Well, I'm having a bad time. Your father? Catherine shot me a look, but Margaret responded well. Yes. I don't know, Well, I was the one who recommended his company to the superior. I don't know why I did it. I heard her lamenting how expensive it might be, and I sort of blurted it out. I have no reason to be sad, but when I saw him standing there, I felt a great deal of shame. Ridiculous. What do you have to be ashamed of? I don't know. Everything? What have I done with my life since taking my vows? I came here because I couldn't bear the idea of starting a family, but I haven't done anything to make up for it. To make up for it? Honestly, don't talk about yourself like that. He's very proud of you. He said so when you met yesterday. He's the type who would be proud of me if I was a prostitute. What the hell? I don't know, I think I used to envision greater things for myself. Like what? I'm not sure. Making something? A great work? A scholarly breakthrough or some other body of work? Some music perhaps? You do make music. You played me your compositions before. Yes, I remember you performing one in the Misericorde. It was beautiful. Margaret smiled through her tears. I appreciate that, but that could scarcely be called a great work. I never finished it. I have so many half-finished ideas, and when Catherine died, she took the other halves with her. She broke down sobbing again. Catherine embraced her from behind. Margaret, my dear, you mustn't think that way. You wouldn't understand. We had plans. Catherine and I were going to change the world. At least that's what she said. I should have believed her. I should have done more. I just didn't give myself to her ideas as fully as I could have, as I should have. And now I'll never have the opportunity again. I'm rudderless. What was Catherine's idea? Margaret removed her face from her hands and looked at me through crystalline tears. It does not matter anymore. She had a vision, and now that she's gone, there's nothing anyone can do. The door is closed, I'm afraid. She wiped her face with her sleeve and cleared her throat. Well, I should at least make an appearance in the camp. Catch up properly with my father, you know. Should I join you? No. I have to do this myself. I appreciate the offer, though. Catherine looked as though she wanted to argue, but said nothing. Margaret sniffed and waved goodbye to the two of us. When she had rounded the corner, Catherine let out a withering sigh. She never let me in on whatever Catherine was on about either, for what it's worth. I found out about everything I told you against their will. Really? Yes. As close as Margaret and I have always been, I was never part of that little club. Would that have anything to do with that odd whistle I keep hearing? Whistle? What whistle? The one I saw Charity doing. No. I'm not familiar. I'm referring to Catherine II's little gang, which was just her, Mara, Margaret, and Eustace. Wait, Margaret was part of it too? The one I told you about last night. She cleared her throat. So, how worried should I be? I haven't been to Superior yet, if that's what you're referring to. Good. Are you sure there's nothing else you can tell me? Catherine shrugged. I only ever heard bits and pieces here and there. Whispers. It all sounded rather gruesome. I didn't pry. Margaret would always cinch up tight when I asked her questions about it. I promised I told you everything that I know. How odd. Honestly, though, why wouldn't they involve me? What room can't I liven up? Come now. Just a little joke. I was lost in thought. Catherine, Moira, Margaret, and Eustace was a rather odd combination of sisters. They were the younger yet, to be sure, but I had never taken Moira and Margaret as very close. And Eustace was so attached to Darcy, it was difficult to imagine them not being involved in something together. Even my single lead, the smoke, didn't seem to connect them. Moira remembered smoke, Margaret did not, and I hadn't ever dared to ask Eustace about it. Only Catherine's assertion that murder was involved made it anything more than a dead end. It was too compelling to give up on. And you're positive you don't remember anything else? I'm afraid so. I just can't think of anybody those sisters would want to kill. I can't imagine anyone here killing someone. How flattering. I desperately wanted to know about Catherine's history with her husband, but that was a mystery for another time. I do apologize if I seem pushy. I'm just tired of having to be so paranoid. I keep spying Flora and her new cohort spying on me from afar. Really? Well, spying is a polite way to put it. It's hard to sneak around in a wheelbarrow. But they always look so shifty when I notice them. Well, I'm sure that's entirely unrelated to the Superior, at least. You would think so, but who knows? Anyhow, what are you up to for the rest of the day, Hedwig? I must say, seeing you running around naked as anything under that cloak almost made up for your grim news last night. I appreciate the compliment, Sister Catherine, but I am rather busy today. Perhaps if Catherine had been willing to impart information about the mysterious whistling, I would have obliged her further. Right then, I was so determined to make any progress at all that I would happily sell myself to the bare shred of direction. Another time, then. Perhaps. We walked together out of the garden. Well, I suppose I go pull up a chair with the old folks and watch the men for a while. I would ask that you not speak to anybody else about my investigation. Why would I? It implicated me as much as you. Of course. Have a good day then, Sister Catherine. She nodded somewhat tersely and went on our separate ways. I was determined to narrow down the meaning of this whistle. Charity had done it right in front of me. The sound had been driving me mad ever since I first heard it. I did a lap or two of the cloister hoping to run into somebody who could help me. Naturally, this meant running into at least the least helpful people possible. Flora, Bridget, and Violet were loitering in front of the chapel, gesticulating animatedly. Hedwig! Maybe she'll know. Doubt it. Know what? Where do birds go in the winter? What? It's a fairly straightforward question. Certainly, but why? We're just interested, that's all. We were talking about something else, and one of us mentioned birds. I brought up birds. Right, yeah. And now I want to know, where do birds go in the winter? Well, in Jeremiah, it says that storks fly according to the seasons, so presumably they go somewhere warmer. Africa, perhaps. That's what I said. No, it isn't. You said they flew to India. Africa isn't India, right? No, they're different. India is closer than Africa for one thing. That's Ethiopia. Africa's right next to Spain, and then a bit further down is India. And then a bit further down is Ethiopia. That's a long way to fly, ain't it? That's why I said they flew to Africa. No, you said India. Because I thought Africa wasn't in India. Which is closer than Ethiopia, which is really far away. I'm getting all confused now. Me too. Anyway, I don't think the birds go anywhere warmer. It must take an awfully long time to fly between different countries, and there are 4 seasons. They'd be flying back and forth all year, wouldn't they? I think they just sleep in caves. That's what happened to King Arthur. Here she goes. If they sleep in caves, how come nobody ever finds birds in caves? People find birds in caves all the time. Those are bats. Maybe the birds turn into bats. Animals can turn into other animals? Some can. Barnacles turn into geese. That's because barnacles are goose eggs. It's not the same thing as turning into another animal. Barnacles are animals? If I may interrupt for a moment, have any of you heard of a strange whistling today? Or ever? No. That's right. Haven't heard a thing. Very well. I can sense that this would go nowhere useful. My apologies, but I doubt I can help with your query. Do let me know if you make any interesting discoveries, I suppose. What's the weather in Trier like this time of year? I have no idea. Same it is here, I would imagine. Good to know. Thanks. Take care. I took my leave. I got the sense they would be arguing for a long while. I doubled back the way I had come from. Who else could I ask, I wondered. Perhaps Adela would be in the cellar. I hurried down the stairs into the darkness. It was as dark as ever down here. There was no obvious signs of Adela. I'd assumed she would be nearer the front where I had met her and tried her cherry before. Alas, it was clear she was deeper in somewhere. Adela, are you down here? I winced as my voice echoed around the massive croft. Adela's eventual reply was completely inaudible. There was nothing for it. Once more into the sea of cask I went. As I stalked the rows of aging wines, I thought back to the ledger entry I had seen in the library. This was an awful lot of sherry. The barrels we had smashed for Catherine's makeshift wake would scarcely have been missed had I still been a part of this grand order. I had absolutely no economic sense, but as I saw more and more barrels, more and more wine, I began to believe that perhaps the number made sense. The cellars must have run under the entire cloister. I was lost in thought when I rounded the corner to a new row and yelped. There was that painting again. It had morphed. Flora did appear to have some technical skill after all. The figure was quite realistic now, though still scarcely recognizable as human. It had eyes, hair, and a figure. It was missing a mouth, however. Instead, there was only well-rendered skin stretched under the nose, as if the subject's maw had healed shut like a wound. The eyes were bright and familiar, but I could see no soul behind them. Infuriatingly, the eyes refused to meet mine. I'm waiting for it to... Is it turning? It's turning! The subject's gaze was fixed elsewhere. Or were they? Standing here alone in the dark, I felt a chill of recognition. Slowly, the unmistakable sensation of being observed crept into my mind. Of course this thing could see me. I'd spent years hidden away from prying eyes. The feeling of being seen was all too new to me. All too recognizable. I pulled myself away from the painting and retreated into the rows of barrels until I found Adela. When I found her, she was busy examining barrels of sherry, as I had predicted. Oh, hello, Sister Hedwig. How are you this morning? Fairly well, thank you. But I'm in rather a hurry. I just had a question for you. Adela looked concerned. An important question? What is it, Sister Hedwig? I saw Charity blow a mighty whistle earlier. I've heard the same sound more than once. Do you have any idea what it's all about? Adela furrowed her brow. Perhaps she just enjoys whistling? Was there anything else? What on earth was everyone hiding from me? Sister Adela, I do not mean to pry or to exceed my station, but this is very strange. I heard this sound once before after Flora's injury, and now I've just heard it again. I saw Charity do it, in fact. And I've asked several people now, and I've only gotten these vague answers, and I want to know. It feels awful to not be included. Surely it can't be anything too nefarious or too difficult for me to understand. I truly am sorry, but I really don't have an answer for you. But she does look guilty. What I can say is that I was once where you were. I know what it's like to feel this way. But patience is a virtue. Perhaps you'll find what you're looking for if you just wait. She smiled pleasantly at me. Perhaps so. Well, that was more of an answer than anyone else had been willing to give me. Something told me that this was as good as an answer I was ever going to get, whether or not I wanted to heed the advice well. That was another matter entirely. Running around and desperately asking every sister was beginning to look like a futile course of action, but I could feign patience while pursuing other avenues. I had gotten rather good at that. Would you like to taste this sherry? It is shaping up nicely. I accepted the ladle she was offering and tried to sip of wine. I spat it out immediately, and Adela giggled. That was just as awful as it was before. It is actually very different, but it takes a lot of practice to be able to tell, I suppose. Indeed. A thought occurred to me. This sherry is part of a very expensive order, is it not? I saw it in the ledger once working in the library. Indeed. Most of the wine here is being made for others. Of course. But this sherry is something special, isn't it? That is correct. That's why I was brought to Limbarrow after all. Yes, I think you mentioned that before. Has it been rewarding? Limbarrow is not my favorite convent, but my work is satisfying. I should hope so. Sounds like a lot of work. Indeed. And that is not to mention Marta and her stubborn habits. She never wanted to relinquish her work to me. Who ordered the sherry? Adela cocked her head to the side. Why do you ask? Well, if the superior went so far as bringing in an expert like yourself to oversee it, you're correct. It's a very important client, supposedly. Fortunately, that is all I was told. You are not the only one kept in the dark in some matters, Sister Hedwig. Does that not make you feel irritated? Used? Not particularly. Not anymore. I learned some time ago that I can only be given what others wish to give me, and I am less likely to be given something I demand. Respect only grows while unobserved. That's what I think, anyway. I nodded, chewing this over. That sounds very wise, Sister Adela. I would like to think so. Is there anything else I could help you with? No, I don't believe so. Thank you. I bowed my head and turned to take my leave. Will you be attending the bonfire tonight? Another bonfire so soon? Yes, as long as the weather permits it. We are hoping to enjoy one last fire before the snow comes. In that case, I should love to join you. Adela smiled widely. I should look forward to seeing you, Sister Hedwig. The odds of a bonfire being possible seemed rather low later that morning. I had made my way back upstairs intending to sit at my writing desk and ponder the bone I had retrieved from the sacristy. I felt a little embarrassed that I had let Charity's whistle distract me so badly. However, as I crested the stairs, I noticed that the door to the library was ajar. Curious to see if the library was yet habitable, I poked my head inside. Indeed, cleaning had already begun. The floor nearest the door was spotless and slightly damp. Somewhere up ahead I could hear the sound of brush against stone. A lone woman was on her hands and knees, a bucket next to her, scrubbing away the tiles. Hello? Oh, Hedwig. How are you? Well enough. What are you doing? Eustace stopped scrubbing and wiped her forehead with her arm, turning to look at me. Penance, I could call it. Superior was going to tell some of the men to help, but it's my responsibility, isn't it? I suppose so. So you're still keeping the others away even though you burnt everything, so there's still stuff you're trying to hide. Did you need something? On second thought, Sister Eustace? Not the moment. Very well then. She bent down and went back to her scrubbing. My curiosity about the whistle had brought me to her, but quite frankly, I didn't want to be anywhere near her. Every moment I spent near Eustace now was a gamble. We were standing across from each other, blades drawn. So far, neither of us had made a move. but I was planning my strikes carefully, and I did not want to give her any opportunity to guess what I might do. I knew she was up to something, and soon I would present my case to the superior. I was getting good at acting, pretending, and playing, but not good enough to spend extended time with my suspect. My thoughts were a complete jumble. I had been without my workbook for too long. Why was I allowing myself to waste time on something as silly as an annoying whistle? I sighed. One thing was for certain. I needed to speak to Angela as soon as I could. Back to the superior's office it was then. I imagined what it would have looked like if I had traced today's movements in my hastily abandoned book. It'd be an illegible scribble to be sure. Yes? Is Sister Angela with you? I must speak with her. No, she's not. Come in. She beckoned me inside and I obliged without thinking. I realized as soon as she shut the door that I had just unwillingly stepped into something of a trap. If this is to do with your investigation, tell me and I will relay it to her. Oh, no, I need to speak to her specifically. Why is that? Surely anything you can tell the prioress is fit for the superior. I glanced around the room to discover that the side bedroom door opened. The bishop was still here, seated on the bed, hands folded over his chest. He looked at me with the same apologetic expression he wore every time the superior raised their voice in his presence. Yes, but this has nothing to do with the investigation. Or rather, it is, but only tangentially. I would not want to bother you with it until I've had the chance to, compare notes with Angela. Excuse me. An excuse I've heard before, I believe. You wouldn't happen to know anything about Angela planning to usurp me, would you? What? No, what do you mean? The superior's eyes narrowed. Curious. You two have been working together quite closely. Are you sure you know nothing about this? I haven't the slightest idea what this is. Sister Angela has her quarrels with you, but I swear I haven't heard anything about any kind of plot to usurp you. I accidentally allowed myself to put a mocking spin on usurp and brace myself for recrimination. It's a bit of a stretch, Mabel. He called out from the bedroom. My savior. I trust Sister Mara's judgment. She says Angela had been behaving very strangely recently, and I tend to agree. And I can attest to the fact that Angela has been evasive in our recent meetings. I could guess why. I need to speak to Angela as soon as possible and share what I had found in the sacristy. Everyone has been behaving a little out of sorts lately. Excuse me. I think it might have to be the builders. They have interrupted your routine. You're right about that. Did you know Crispin was in here earlier, complaining about finding human remains underneath the old tower's rubble? I must have been absent for that. Apparently, it upset some of the men greatly. Some of the more foreign workers refused to do anything for the rest of the day. Why? Superstition is common in some of the darker parts of the world. Indeed. Apparently. Excuse me. Anyway, it apparently cut into their schedule. Some of the men wanted to burn the bones of the nasty heathens. Good lord. I dare say your old superior deserved better than Wycliffe. What happened? I told him to wrap up the bones or whatever was left of them and bring them to me. Then I sent Eustace up the hill to bury them next to the proper grave. Part for penance for all the trouble in the library. The previous superior had been properly buried. We had a burial for her, just, without a body. The bishop tuttered disapprovingly from the other room. Those remains should have been taken care of a long time ago. We did what we could considering she was under God knows how many tons of stone. Anyway, I'm done shouting across the room, Richard. Get out of here, would you? I heard the bishop sigh. He had been comfortable where he was, it seemed. We're getting rather off topic, I think. Indeed, suffice it to say, the builders had interrupted your routine. A reasonable argument, but I don't know. They can't be all of it. Something feels rather off. Off? I completely understand, Superior. I have felt it too. But I'm not sure it has anything to do with Angela specifically. There are strangers working here now. There are new oblates we haven't grown accustomed to. Margaret's father is here, and a fire broke out in the library. I think we might be able to extend a little grace to everyone. It has been a long week. The superior appeared to consider my words carefully. She's a wise one, Mabel. Perhaps it would be best to try and relax for a change. It would be a change for me. You've done nothing but relax since you got here. It's a working holiday. Huh. Well, I apologize, Hedwig, but I have no idea where Angela is. I do expect a report from you too soon. I will endeavor to have something fruitful to report. The superior nodded curtly and ushered me back outside. Well then, what now? It was just after midday. I had urgent information to share with Angela, but I had no idea where she was, and I was beginning to feel a bit jumpy, a bit tense. Perhaps the bishop had been onto something. I had been running around all morning chasing that stupid whistle, and I still hadn't quite recovered from what Catherine had told me the night before. I hadn't even taken a close look at the bonehead underneath my bed. With a groan, I chastised myself for trying to tackle too many tasks at once without finishing any of them. I dashed back up the stairs toward the dorms and slipped back into my room. I shaved my clothes and slid under the covers. Perhaps a real nap would serve me well. It was just as the bishop had said. It was good to relax.
When you want to get off the darkest ground, but gravity pulls you straight down.